There have been so many disputes over the Ouija board and where it came from, they travel to the name itself. One of the early manufacturers said that the board spelled out its own name. Another said that Ouija is Egyptian for good luck. It is not. And another said that Ouija is simply a marriage of the French and German words for yes. No one could agree on where it came from. We don't know. We can't even agree on how it should be pronounced. So you can take your pick. The earliest aspect of the spiritualist experience was the seance. People joining hands around a table in a darkened parlor, and a medium, usually a woman, who would go into a kind of trance state and spirits would speak through her. But Americans went in search of technologies to make the whole experience easier and to find a way of doing it themselves, to dispense with the medium. One of the things people would engage in would be what became known as automatic writing. Somebody would simply hold a quill in his or her hand and attempt to go into a trance state and write some message from the afterworld. But that was unsatisfying to a lot of people because it produced page after page of very meandering writing. The French came up with an interesting innovation of their own called the Planchette, which would allow people, either individually or in groups, to take a kind of little plank, which looks a great deal like the little plank that revolves around the Ouija board today. Only what the French did was design a little board that was made of wood, that was on ball bearings, and in the center of the planchette they had a hole where you could insert a pencil, and it would slide around and write out messages from the spirit world. It was supposed to be easier than automatic writing, but again, it could be tedious, it could be time-consuming, and people seem to feel it produced page after page of barely intelligible writing. So along came the American engineers, and they created all kinds of things with different pulleys and devices and weights. When you look at the blueprints of some of these things, you'll find it hard to imagine that people felt that these objects could have made anything much easier. Now, there was another development happening, and it was much simpler than this whole wide array of spiritual telegraph devices. And it was something that was sometimes used at seances called the alphabet board. It was just a very simple board with the letters of the alphabet printed out on it, and sometimes a medium would point to a certain letter, and upon pointing to a letter, if she received a spirit knock or some sort of symbol from the other world, that system would be used almost as an occult telegraph system to spell out words. Somewhere along the line, a group of spiritualists got the idea that you could take all these innovations and unite them into one beautiful, simple, small object, and that was the talking board. It wasn't until several years later that a group of novelty manufacturers in the city of Baltimore got together and put a patent on this object, and Ouija began to be marketed as a commercial object, as a toy, as a novelty. My contention is actually that Ouija never should have been able to gain a patent in any case, because patents are supposed to be for inventions, not for discoveries. By the 1960s was the period where the board really became this greatly known, iconic object. The toy giant Parker Brothers bought the rights to the Ouija board in 1966, and they started marketing it the following year. The next year, 1967, they sold 2 million Ouija boards, outselling their most popular board game and the most popular game in America, Monopoly. Most of us today think of the Ouija board as an object that's used by kids who lock themselves in bathrooms to try to have spirit communication, or who use the board at sleepover parties or what have you. But there are some interesting and formidable cultural figures who have used the Ouija board, and in very serious ways. One of them is the Pulitzer Prize-winning American poet James Merrill. Merrill won the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry in 1976 for a really epic work called The Book of Ephraim, which he claims that he and his partner David Jackson channeled over a Ouija board. Other poets who have used the Ouija board include Sylvia Plath and Ted Hughes. Plath and Hughes both wrote poems about their experiences using the Ouija board, and probably the most haunting of those poems was Ted Hughes' 1957 poem, Ouija, in which the Ouija board addresses itself to Sylvia Plath, and the board says to Sylvia, "Fame will come, fame especially for you. Fame cannot be avoided, and when it comes, you will have paid for it with your happiness, your husband, and your life. I actually think that Ouija has probably been going through a low point in popularity over the last 10 years or so, but just watch, Ouija totally rides the winds of popular culture. The Exorcist made Ouija boards popular in the early 1970s. Another movie is going to come along that centers around Ouija boards, and suddenly everyone will be talking about them again and going out to buy them. Ouija boards never go away. They're a permanent object of the culture. They just go through peaks and valleys.